Welcome to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors, precisionfuelandhydration.com. You can use the code OA23 for 15% off your first order at precisionfuelandhydration.com. So listen, welcome to the show, everybody. If you're listening on a podcast player, welcome. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome as well. We're going to record this on video so you can get a chance to watch this on YouTube as well. First of all, I want to say big thanks to all the people who've subscribed over the last couple of weeks. I don't know whether it's the effect of Spotify moving more into the realms of podcasting recently, but we've seen our subscriber numbers rocket massively on Spotify in particular. It feels like they're really taking over the podcasting space. Our YouTube numbers are gradually growing in terms of our subscribers as well, which is lovely to see. So if you're one of the people who's liked and subscribed on either of those, then thank you so much. Who knows how these things work, right? But I feel as though it's making a difference. So thank you very much. And it means you get notified as well when the new episode comes out. So that's really good. What I want to do this week is to give you an overview of training in winter. Now, this episode, full disclosure, is mainly aimed at our coached athletes, the ones who are going to be training with us all through the winter and into next season. But it's also kind of a sneak peek behind the scenes for athletes who are listening and who want to make their own training plan, or they're listening and they're maybe thinking about considering signing up for coaching, or they want to get their own coaching tips. I'm going to give you enough information here today that should really help you kind of athletes out as well. But our athletes, Team Oxygenaddict athletes who are training with us, as you'll already know, it's a pretty special time of year for me. And for us as a group, we've got a like-minded group of athletes here. And the reason I say that is when I was an athlete myself, way back in the day, the winter for me always felt like the time when I could make a difference to my fitness at a time when possibly I perceived at the time other people stopped training. They took breaks from training. They didn't ride the bikes as much, certainly. And I can always remember a conversation that an athlete had with me at an early season race. And he said, he was a much older guy than me and he'd won his age group. He'd won the over 60s, I think. And I was chatting with him about his training. And he said, I think the thing that's made the difference this year is I didn't stop training on my bike. This is the first year ever. We've been away out the country loads and I've got to ride my bike. And I feel as though it's really made a difference to my training, the fact that I've managed to ride all through the winter. And I remember thinking, I wonder how many other people don't train during the winter on the bike, because I'd grown up with a dad who was a time trialist. We had turbo trainers in the garage. And to me, it was just, although I recognize now the use of the word normal is perhaps not right in this context. For me, it was normal that my dad would come in 4 nights a week from the garage, just dressed in bib shorts, strip off and put his kit into the washing machine and walk out. And, plenty of my friends have seen that happen. My dad did not give a monkeys. He would just strip off and put his clothes in the washing machine and walk out. So for me, it was normal having this kind of really focused block of winter training going on right from the age of being 11 or 12, probably. That's what I saw my dad doing. It's how I saw him training. It's how I assumed everybody trained. You got the hard work done in the winter. And it was news to me when I chatted to people and found out that often the winter was a time when people took 2 or 3 or 4 months, if not totally off from training, then certainly they would only ride the bike if the weather was decent, or if they had a day off the weekend, or if there was a break in the weather. And obviously it's very hard for people to ride outdoors when it's dark in the wintertime anyway, before the advent of turbo trainers and kickers being the norm. So over this course of the last decade or so, as we've had the advent of Swift and the Wahoo Kicker and all the indoor training platforms, many more people have now started training like we did. And Team Oxygenaddict started off as a relatively small crew of people, and it's grown to be close to 200 coached athletes at this point, who the bedrock of their program, if you like, for summer fitness is winter hard work. And it's training in a rounded way, but doing the hard work in a smart way, in the way that's most going to affect your fitness for the least investment of time. I think that's the way to think about it. It's like a really smart investment strategy that pays a massive dividend on a relatively small monthly payment that you put in. And so if you're new to this podcast, if you're new to this YouTube channel, if you've never come across us before, then this is probably going to be quite eye opening because to this day, the overriding, if you like, the overriding sense of how people should train for endurance events is very much based in the 1950s and 60s, in that you do an awful lot of long, slow base mileage during the winter, and then you sharpen up for events during the spring, and then you do the sprinkle on the top in the summer, and you're ready to race. And that's absolutely fine if you have an awful lot of time to train. You know, if you read any of the top scientists in the area, Stephen Seiler, for example, has done huge studies on um, cross country skiers and the way that they train. And, you know, the huge VO2 maxes that the cross country skiers have is founded on huge volumes of relatively easy zone one, zone two aerobic training during the winter. And and that's great. It definitely works. There's no question. But the volumes that they're talking about, I remember reading some of Dr. Seiler's papers, and we're talking 35 to 45 hours a week of training in order to get those responses. Now, I don't know a single age grouper who has that time available to them. I know some age groupers who have 20 hours a week to train. I'm not convinced that 20 hours is enough doing that kind of training to make the kind of physiological adaptations on their own, for sure, on their own. Um, and so I think that the way that we've developed of training, of the way we used to call it smart use of endurance intensity. And I still think that's the case. I still think it's a really intelligent use of the intensity. That's a way to kind of polarize your training. There's going to be some training that's easy. There's going to be some training that's hard. There's going to be some training that's skill based. There's going to be some training that supports all of this, but we're going to use your time in the best way possible so that when you're out of the 4 months of winter, when you transition back to doing most of your rides outside, when the weather gets nicer and the daylight hours get longer, you will be riding your bike 2 or 3 kilometers an hour faster for the same effort. The power output for the same heart rate is going to be much, much higher with the right structure of training. And as a triathlete, the big payback of this is it's not just biking speed and power that have increased. That is a sign that your overall body's aerobic fitness has increased. And guess what? You're using exactly the same oxygen delivery system for your running and for your swimming as you are for your cycling. And so if your body is better at processing oxygen because you've trained that way on the bike, it's also going to have a knock on effect, definitely to your run, but also to a lesser extent to your swim. That's much more technique based, but your overall aerobic fitness is going to be much, much greater if you train the right way, the smart way during the winter. And what I plan to do today is talk you through how we're going to do this. So for our athletes, for the vast majority of them, we're coming to the end of our end of season break where we're resting, we're refreshing, and we're getting ourselves ready again to really jump into this big block of winter training. And the general top-down overview, how your year approaching a 70.3 or an Ironman is going to look, assuming you're racing in the summertime for 70.3 or Ironman, we're going to have a block of hard work over the winter focused on raising your FTP on the bike. We're going to supplement that with increasing your run durability with frequent, steady runs. And we're going to work on swim technique and refine your ability to move through the water without necessarily working hard, but certainly refine your ability to apply force to the water in the pool. But the majority of that hard work is going to get done in the winter on the bike. When we've used that winter block up, for most people, that's going to be about 4 months worth of work or 16, 17 weeks. We're then going to transition into a spring block and then a summer race preparation block that's going to take you, and if you like, add progressively your endurance ability to ride your bike longer, run longer, swim longer, and transfer that newfound speed, power, fitness into specific endurance you can then translate into your events for the summertime. So today we're just going to focus on talking about our winter block. So for our athletes, what does this look like? It's going to be 2 8-week blocks separated by a week. I've got the week of Christmas blocked out for our athletes as a recovery week. So we're going to have an 8-week block where we're focusing entirely on improving our FTP, a recovery week, then another 8-week block before we recover and go into our specific race build program later in the year. The break over Christmas, I think, is really important, and it's become apparent to me over the years, over the sort of 15 years of coaching athletes. We haven't always put it in. Last year was an experiment for me where some athletes had it and some didn't, and I got to kind of double blind test it, if you like, and look at the athletes who did well with this and the athletes who didn't do so well with this. Universally, the athletes who took a break over Christmas or who didn't do specifically hard training over Christmas did better on that second block. And so I think it's really, really valuable. And the second part of it is everybody always thinks they're going to have loads of time over the Christmas week because they're off work and they're off school and the family's around and I'll be able to find the time to do the training. There's parties going on, but I'm going to find the time to really dedicate to it. Everybody burns the candle at both ends during that Christmas week. And I don't think trying to layer on top extra hard training is the solution to getting people through the Christmas period and ready for the next block of training in the best shape they can be. So our focus over Christmas is going to be recovery, essentially, recovery from that first 8-week block. And that's the first principle we're going to talk about today. So tip number 1 for you when you're designing your winter training program this year, plan recovery first. You're going to plan recovery into every week. You're going to plan a block of recovery into every 4-week block. And you're going to plan a block of recovery at the end of that 8-week block. The recovery, and I cannot stress this enough, the recovery is the point where your body makes fitness gains. If you don't have the right recovery in, you won't be making the use of the training that you've done, and you may as well not have done it. It is as cut and dried as that. It is not cheating. It is not weak. It's not taking the easy way out. It's not something that pro athletes don't do. Recovery is an essential part of your training, and you must treat it as such. So that's tip number 1. Plan the recovery in to your week, to your 4-week block, to your 8-week block, and make sure it's planned in first. So my athletes are going to have a recovery focused day every week. So for me, I plan it in on a Monday for them. It's been a big week. The weekend's had some longer work in, so we're going to recover on the Monday. You don't have to have it then. It can be moved around, but the recovery has to be planned in a smart way so that you're actually using it to recover from the hardest things you've had to do that week, whether that's training, whether that's big social things, whether it's a tiring weekend. Use the next available day to focus on recovery. Now, that might be a total rest day. It might be a recovery swim. It might be going for yoga and massage, but you cannot run or ride hard on that day and expect to recover. It's as simple as that. You can't do it. You can't do weight training. You can't just go in and do 40 minutes of hardcore work. That's not the purpose of a recovery day. Make it recovery focused. Okay. Now, tied in with recovery, I want you, and this is tip number 2. So tip number 2 for you. The best way to make these gains across the winter is to only train hard on a day when your body is ready and able to absorb the training that you're going to do. And that means measuring your heart rate variability every day. Super, super easy. There's an app called HRV for training. All you have to do is cover the camera on the back of your camera phone, sit still for a minute first thing in the morning. The HRV for training app will take your HRV and it will give you guidelines. It'll either say train as normal, fantastic. That's what you're going to get on probably 28 days out of 30. It's going to say red, rest today. That's really, really important that you rest on that day. Or it's going to say amber, dial the intensity down today. So let's talk about those 2 days. On a day when HRV is telling you your body isn't ready to train hard, you will make more gains in the long term by resting than you will by trying to push on through. That's just validated in dozens of scientific studies at the moment. And if you're going to ignore that advice, you better have a really good reason for it. And because I felt like I should do something, that's not it. Even I couldn't fit the workout in on another day of the week. Regardless, you cannot ignore the HRV warning that you have to rest today. You just have to rest. In the studies that Dr. Marco Altini did, he had 2 groups. One group did the training plan regardless. One group, if they got a red HRV warning, they rested that day. They didn't replace the session later that week or later on. So they did less training overall than this group who did everything. and this group made more progress than this group, as measured in FTP increase on the bike. So by training less, they made more progress. By listening to their body and only training hard when it's ready to, they made more progress. So HRV should be an integral part of your training plan. It's like a cheat code for training. If you only do what that says, fantastic. So green HRV code means crack on as normal. A red means rest. The amber warning, it doesn't mean you have to not train today. It just means you need to dial the intensity of your training down. Now, we give our coached athletes specific guidance around this. It's too much to go into here if you're not one of our coached athletes, but suffice to say, you need to dial the intensity down on those days. Okay. Our athletes, you can refer to the HRV and training guide embedded in the Monday of every week in Training Peaks. That will give you exactly how much percentage of FTP to dial things down, how many seconds per K to dial things down on the run, how many seconds per 100 to dial things down on your swim set. Okay. So all of that information is embedded in Training Peaks. You'll know exactly what to do and it will remove all of the guesswork. But at the very least, if you're not coached by us and you're not using HRV at the moment, it's the biggest investment that you can make. The app costs £10. We're not associated with it at all. We get no kickback or anything like that from them. But I think it's a brilliant app and it's a genuine way to promote a product that I think is really revolutionized the way our athletes train. So there you go. That's a free tip for you there, the HRV for training app. Okay. So we've talked about the importance of recovery. We've talked about the importance of measuring your HRV every day. Let's get into the meat and bones of your training plan. So tip number 3 for this winter training block is if you just take away one little thing in your head, one little catchphrase, it's train like a triathlete. Don't train like a swimmer and biker and runner. Because what you'd end up doing if you trained like a swimmer and a biker and a runner is taking the hard sessions from all of their plans, putting them together and ending up trying to train really hard every day of the week. Now, when I do coach education for British Triathlon and we get the triathlon coach candidates to kind of draw out a rough sketch of a week of training, what they think it should look like, an awful lot of them come back and it's got 2 threshold swims, it's got 2 threshold runs, it's got 2 threshold bike rides and a long ride. And people look at that and they think, yep, that's fine. An athlete can deal with that. And it's often really hard for us tutors to say to people, hang on a minute, you can't train at threshold every day of the week and not be completely destroyed. And the challenge here for the athlete who is a club athlete and is going to different sessions of a club, coached by different coaches at the club, is often, unfortunately, that's exactly what you end up getting. If you go to 2 swim sets of a week coached by different swim coaches who often are not talking to each other, you're going to end up with 2 threshold swim sets in the week. If you go to the running club track session twice a week, you're going to get 2 running club threshold or often much higher than threshold running sessions, really brutal 400-meter repeats on the track. And if you go to a cycling club, you're often going to end up in a chain gang, which is at and above threshold intervals on the bike. Very often when the coaches are not talking to each other at the club, or there isn't a very strong head coach character saying, hang on, the athletes are training hard here, this needs to be easy. It's very hard for those individual coaches to make the sessions match up in a way that's best for the athlete. So if you're a self-coached or a not coached athlete, just be really, really aware of that. You've probably got 2 hard sessions in you a week. And if you're choosing a hard swim set and a hard run set, you haven't got the gas in the tank to do any hard bike sessions. And I'm here to tell you that that's the best way for you to get bang for your buck is by doing those hard bike sessions. Okay. So little bit of warning there. The overview of our winter training week, our repeatable week, we're going to talk about swims and bikes and runs at this point. The bedrock of your training plan is going to be our bike sessions. And as standard, my training plans are going to come with 3 bike sessions, 3 run sessions, and they're going to have 3 written swim sessions, which I won't expect all athletes to do all of. So I think in an ideal week, I'll have athletes bike 2 or 3 times, run 2 or 3 times, and swim ideally at least once. And for our weaker swimmers, a second and maybe a third time as well. So we're going to have to balance their training week out there. Athletes who are coached by us, you can contact me in our communication app we can chat back and forth here about this. If you're not sure which of the sessions are exactly the right ones for you to do to get the balance in your week, by all means, drop us a thread and we'll talk about that in the group. That's exactly what that's there for. We've got the training and HRV guide embedded in the Monday of each week with the priorities in. But the nuance of this is, for example, if you really, really need to work on your swim, we're going to have to prioritize those swim sessions if you want to complete your Ironman. If you really, really want to get stronger on the bike, we're going to have to prioritize the bike sessions. So there's some nuance there. So my coach athletes, you've got that direct route to me all the time in our app on the phone or on the desktop. You can DM me or you can start a thread in our group and we can go through that on there. So that's great. So let's have an overview of how the standard repeatable basic winter week is going to look. We are going to have 3 bike sessions in there. 2 of these bike sessions are going to be a hard interval session, and the third one is going to be a longer, easier endurance ride. Ideally, it's going to be done outdoors, but it can be done indoors on the kicker if the weather's terrible. My guidance here is ride outdoors whenever you can and whenever it's safe. That should be your default. If it's icy and it's been snow down overnight, or there's ice down overnight, or the temperature's been below 4 degrees overnight, my advice is going to be I'd much rather you ride indoors on the trainer and stay away from black ice. Again, as a club coach, I saw far too many episodes of people going out in the winter when it had been really cold overnight. The group hits black ice and people come down and break bones. It's awful. So if it's been below 4 degrees, stay inside. If there's ice on the road, stay inside. Remember, even if it's been icy overnight and the sun's come out, on the kind of back lanes you end up on a group ride, always ice hiding in the shadows of those hedges. So be super, super careful. Okay. Now then, our 2 key bike workouts every week are going to be focused interval endurance rides. Again, for our athletes who are coached by us, the exact percentage of FTP for you is in the session. And once you've got your training plan set up with your own individual FTP number, you'll see that number for you on the screen. So if John's FTP is 200, he's going to see a number relative to that. If Joanna's FTP is 300, she's going to see a number relative to that. But the warm up, the cool down, the main set intervals, the recovery, all of those is going to be at a specific number for you, and it's going to be relative to your FTP. Now, there's often a kind of a wrinkled nose accusation leveled at triathlon coaches like me who do it professionally, who coach large numbers of people. And that accusation tends to be, it's cut and paste coaching. People get the same training plan and how can it be individualized? And the answer is, well, the genius of Training Peaks allows 2 athletes to have the same base session, but not complete the same session. Because the athlete over here is training at the exact wattage that they need to stimulate their FTP to grow. And this athlete over here is training at the exact wattage that they need to. The coach is putting the same session into both calendars, but the athletes have got a very different outcome. And that's the answer really to how you can coach a large number of athletes at scale and everybody makes progress. Because like I said, it's easy to sort of throw that hand grenade and go, it's just dead easy. These coaches just copy and paste and give everyone the same plan. It isn't that at all. What we're doing is we're making sure that athletes are training at exactly the right intensity on the swim, the bike, and the run for them to make the most progress they can make in the limited time that they have. So it isn't a bike session that says train at 200 watts. It isn't that at all. It's train at the exact proportion of your FTP percentage that's going to get you that gain that you're looking for. So bear that in mind, okay? I think it's very easy for people to be very critical of coaches like me and the things that we do, but the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the number of athletes that come back to us year after year. The proof is in the number of athletes who leave and go away and go to other coaches and come back again and say, do you know what? I thought I'd go and try a different method over here, and it hasn't worked for me at all. You had a bunch of those guys come back to us, and it's brilliant. I love it when they come back, because apart from the validation that the plan works, they miss something within Team OA when they go away. There's something that can't be replicated. So I'm really grateful for those athletes who come back. And you know what? If you're out there watching or listening and you've been a former athlete and you want to come back to us, just drop us a line and get in touch. We would absolutely love to hear from any old athletes. and help you out with your training going forwards. So we've got our repeatable week. We've got 2 hard interval sessions on the bike. We've got our long endurance ride. Because we are doing our 2 hard threshold sessions there on the bike, the vast majority of everything else that we're going to do is going to be steady or easy. So all of our runs are going to be done at a very specific pace. Again, it's going to be absolutely specific to you and relative to your own recent race performances. So we can predict your running VO2 max, we can predict your running threshold from paces you performed in races, and we can give you an exact pace that we need you to run at and an exact zone we need you to run in during the winter so that we know you will make the best progress. It's not guesswork, and you certainly won't have a session that says, just go out for a run and have a chat with somebody. There's a specific zone that's going to come up on your Garmin or your smartwatch that tells you what pace we want you running at. And it's going to be relative to you and your race performances. So no guesswork, absolutely guaranteed to get you fitter and stronger faster than any other use of time you could have. Okay. So we're going to have 3 of those runs. And the great thing here is they're all going to be at that easy pace. They're all going to be at that relatively steady running. You don't have to put those hard intervals in those 400-meter repeats that you see on the track. I won't have our athletes do any of that kind of running at all during our winter block because we're doing all of that hard work already on the bike. And all of those adaptations that happen within your muscle fibers, all of the, if you want to get physiological about it, all of the lactate shuttling and all of the getting used to the metabolites changing, all of that happens in your blood as part of the hard bike session. So we're using the running to increase the durability of your body and to make you injury proof. Now, there's an old joke I've told before. If you go to a running club Christmas party and if you get somebody's name, that's okay. The best way to go about having a conversation with someone is just to ask them how their injury is. And it's a great icebreaker because every runner is always dealing with an injury, right? It smooths over the fact you've forgotten their name. The reason that runners always have injuries is those hard, fast interval sessions that they do that form the bedrock. And poor runners, they have to do that because it's the only way they can do it. They have to do it on the running track. It's a necessary part of getting fast, whereas triathletes don't have to. We can do it on the bike. So I was talking to a new athlete today as part of his onboarding call, and I said to him, I want you to forget all about running pace. I don't want you to look at your watch at all and think, oh, I want to break 25 minutes for 5K. Oh, I should have been under 5 minutes a K. I want all of the thoughts of time and pace as a measure of success to go. And the only measure of success is after you finish the run, are you sore or not? The next day, are you sore or not? If you find you're starting to get sore, I want you to put more walk breaks into your runs. And I really want you just to relax into things. Just you slow things down more and have more walk breaks, because it's the repeated running and time on your feet that is going to give you the kind of fitness your body needs to do well in a triathlon, specifically 70.3 in Ironman. It is not hard intervals, fast intervals, hill reps, hill sprints, wind sprints. None of that is necessary. And I'm going to be really blunt with people here. You are wasting valuable training time. You are wasting valuable training energy. You are wasting the time and energy that you could be recovering from meaningful, purposeful training by doing something that your ego thinks you need to do to make you feel good. Now, that's the long and short of it. It is not easy to be a mentally strong athlete who commits to a process of running really steady all winter and knows they're going to get faster because of it. It should be enough for athletes to be told by a coach, this is the way to do it. Here's evidence of hundreds of athletes who've done it and got faster. To me, it feels like that should be enough. But every year we have, half a dozen athletes who really, really, really struggle because they're always on Instagram or they're always looking at other things on YouTube. They're always watching pro athletes doing really hard run intervals. And so they think they should do these as well. Here's like the secret. You're not a pro athlete. You're not, in the most cases, certainly for most of the guys that I coach, you're not 23 years old. You're not Joe Skipper. You're not blessed with a body that can bounce back within a few hours of doing a hard run session and not get sore. If you're into your 40s, into your 50s, you've got to be much, much smarter. You've got to be much wilier. You've got to train the right way, in the way that you're going to bounce back from, and the way that's going to allow you to train the next day. Now, that brings us on to our next tip. We're going to talk about swim training. So, we are going to have occasionally a small amount of harder threshold type swimming in our swims. That's okay, as long as we don't end up having it all the time. The key thing to remember is sometimes hard swimming is a good drill, and that's what we use it for. Swimming hard and fast makes the water feel more solid and gives us a better grip on the water. And for all of us, getting a better grip on the water, applying force with more skill to the water, is how we're going to travel faster through the water. In almost all cases of adult onset swimmers, it's not your fitness that means you're not swimming a 6-minute 400. It's not your fitness at all. It's applying force to the water, and it's getting your body position right in the water. And none of that is done by absolutely thrashing yourself trying to swim at threshold. Like I said, there will be some harder swimming. That's a necessary part of the drill. But specific drills used really intelligently and specific swim repeats used really intelligently are the key to moving you forward in your swimming. And like I said, to me, there's that number around 6 minutes per 400 is the tipping point of you're getting to the front of the pack now. And at that point, swimming harder more of the time is going to give you some extra gains on your swim. But until that point, you're much, much better off focusing on getting those specific drills done that are going to change your technique, improve your body position, and allow you to swim your endurance swims, if you like, more efficiently, going faster for less effort. So that's going to be the focus of our swimming over the winter. Specific drills used really smartly. Now, the last thing to mention here that underpins all of this training is our strength and conditioning program. And I want you to think of this as conditioning more than strength for almost every group. And I'll come to our exceptions in a minute. So our conditioning means getting our bodies, our muscles, our ligaments, our tendons into shape to be able to absorb the training that we're going to do without picking up niggles or injuries. That means you don't have to go to the weights room as your first port of call. Most of the conditioning stuff that's going to help you avoid run niggles can be done on a gym mat, on the floor, in front of your television. And it's about activating your glutes and your hamstrings. It's about keeping your core strong. It's stuff that you can do while you're watching TV. Like I said, it doesn't have to take tons of time. A 5 or even 10-minute session is plenty, done 3 times a week. And it's enough to keep you starting to get much more conditioned and much stronger. We'll throw in some extra yoga sessions that we use as well that are going to be really good at increasing your flexibility. But that's going to be the underpinning of all of your training plan. Now, the groups that I think we need to add a little bit of resistance training into here specifically is as we age over 50 and ladies who are lacking a little bit of strength. So with those two specific groups, I think it's worth using your strength and conditioning time to have some transition into weight moving exercises and force producing exercises. So we can talk in depth on a future episode about exactly what we'll have done here. But if you're a person who knows how to lift weights already, fantastic. We'll have you embedding some of those weightlifting movements in. If you never have, I'd advise you joining a gym and getting a personal trainer and getting shown, you'll be able to do this in one personal training session, getting shown how you can use simple dumbbells, barbells in order to press, push, and pull in order to be able to maintain your body's muscle mass. And that's all we're talking about here. We're not looking to do a Dorian Yates style Mr. Olympia maximum squats, get your legs sore for 3 days and not be able to sit on the toilet kind of weights routine. We're just doing enough weight training that we are promoting holding onto the muscle mass that we already have. And, in an ideal world, adding a little bit more to it as well. But for those two groups I've mentioned, for our aging athletes and our ladies, maintaining muscle mass as we do endurance training and as we age is really, really smart and really important. So we'll use a little bit of that. So you've got 2 choices. You can either get yourself a barbell or dumbbells at home, or you can stop by the local gym and use the ones there. You don't have to do a ton of it, but the right exercises done smartly at the correct time can make a big, big, massive difference to how your body reacts over if you're 50 and we're looking at a 10-year time frame here, it's going to be a big difference at 60 if we can use those weights and keep our body strong and hold on to our muscle mass. Okay. So that is an overview of our repeatable week. And in the perfect world, I want that repeatable week to be repeated 48 weeks of the year. I want that structure of 3 bikes, 3 runs, 1 to 3 swims, repeated 48 weeks of the year. It doesn't need to be rocket science. It doesn't need to be complicated in order to be effective. If you can get in the habit of daily training and repeat that habit of daily training every day, you're going to make a lot of long-term progress over a medium-term time frame. What we're going to try and avoid is a massive training week followed by a week off because you burnt yourself out. We need to find that sweet spot for all athletes where you can do the same week again, essentially, week after week after week after week. And then as we approach a race, we can gradually increase the length of the longer rides and runs. That's the ideal for me. Now, we talked about embedding recovery into our week and into our block. So every 4th week, we're going to dial things down a little bit. We're going to dial the intensity down in that 4th week. We're going to dial the durations down a bit in that 4th week. So it's kind of a mini recovery week before we go into the second 4-week block. And then, as we've already mentioned, the end of that 8-week block, we're going to have a week of recovery. And for a lot of our athletes, that is going to line up, be right over the Christmas week. But if you can make recovery from your training at the heart of your training plan and physically plan it in first, my athletes, you don't have to do that because I've done it for you already. But if you're a self-coached athlete or you're just listening to this out of interest and getting a peek behind the scenes, that is the number one thing I would put in your diary every day. This is the day I'm going to recover. Plan your week out and then plan when you're going to recover from that week as well. And if you can do that, that's a really good and sustainable habit because it's much less about trying to cram training into a week than it is about finding a way that you can recover from the training that you've done in a sustainable way. Okay, now, a really common question from athletes is, if I have a reasonable winter, if I get my race ready score into the green, if I repeat my training week after week, what kind of gains can I expect? What's going to happen to my FTP, to my run pace, to my swim pace? And my honest answer is, I don't know, because everybody's different. But we can give you some examples from athletes we've coached. Over an 8-week block, athletes make between a 6 to 9% jump in FTP following these training plans for 8 weeks. So some are a little bit at the lower end. So athletes who've been with us 5, 6, 7 years and they've continued training, they're looking at maybe a 5 to 6% jump. Newer athletes are at the higher end of that. So newer athletes are usually 10%-ish at the end of their first block. We've had outliers that have been over a 20% jump in FTP in 8 weeks, but they're not the norm. I would say that it's between that 5 to 10%, with newbies being nearer the 10%. If you can get that jump in 2 blocks, that's a big material difference. For an existing Ironman athlete who's got multiple years under their belt already and their FTP's at 300 watts, now 5% might not sound like much, but 5% takes you from 300 to 315 in 8 weeks. And then in the second block, it takes you from 315 to 330. That's a significant jump with 2 5% movements. A newer athlete coming in with an FTP at, say, 200, 10% on that is 220. And then 10% on that is, 242 at that point. That is a big, big jump over the winter. A lady coming in with an FTP of 150 is going to go to 165, is going to go to 180. Again, it's a big, big jump relative to traditionally a smaller body frame as well. So I tell you to not get hung up on those numbers. I'd say to you, make the process at the heart of this. Make the committing to the daily training the thing that you get value from, and let the results be as they are, because everyone's going to be different. Somebody's numbers are going to be massive and somebody's numbers are not going to be as big. But ultimately, nobody can tell how much faster you're going to go for that wattage increase anyway. So focus less on that and more on, can I get into a daily rhythm of putting exercise at the heart of the thing that I do for myself every day? if you've committed to a 70.3 or an Ironman next year, put that daily process at the heart of what you do every day around your work life and your family life. Find that time for yourself that's dedicated to you and your goal over the next year. And you will see progress. Can't guarantee the numbers, but I can absolutely guarantee that you'll see material progress. So make that the daily habit, and that in itself will be a really big change in your life. In terms of swim gains, again, it's very difficult to put numbers on. But what I'll say is this: most people who come to triathlon from a running or a biking background are much fitter than their swim numbers show. And it's not lack of fitness that's holding them back. And so you shouldn't expect your progress in the pool to be linear. Often you can make a massive jump forwards in a relatively short period of time. I've seen athletes knock 10 seconds off 100 not within one session, but after one coaching tip from me on the pool deck when we were away in our Mallorca camp, to swim 10 seconds faster over 100 meters. Because it's not their fitness. And I'm not saying I'm the great I am. It's just when you can see something that somebody's doing and help them change it, it's almost like they're being held back in the water by an invisible parachute. And all the coach has done is taken the parachute off them. Now that's not holding them back. Maybe the body position's slightly different now and they're floating better. Or maybe they've got slightly different hand entry angle and now they're gripping the water better. It immediately translates into more speed through the water. So if you're typically a competitive swimmer, a competitive biker and runner, but you're way down in the swim, don't give up hope. It isn't a fitness thing. And yes, you can make a jump of 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 100 almost immediately for the extreme cases, if you can make those breakthroughs in your technique. So winter's a great time to work on that technique. Okay. In terms of run pace improvements, it's not unusual to see people just from steady running to have a 15-second per kilometer increase in their pace at the same heart rate across an 8-week block. So again, that over 2 8-week blocks, that could be 30 seconds per kilometer faster, which is, 40, 45 seconds a mile. That is a material difference in your running pace at the same heart rate. And again, it's kind of irrelevant how fast you can run 5K or 3K or 10K. It's not a good predictor of how well you're going to do at Ironman. But your pace at a steady heart rate is a really good predictor of that. And if we can bring you down from, 7 minutes a K to 6 minutes a K over the winter, that's a real good sign that you're going to be running closer to 6 minutes a K in your Ironman, or bring you down from 6 minutes a K to 5:30 a K. Turn 5:30 a K out in your Ironman marathon and you're in a sub 4 hour marathon. So it's not about really hard, difficult sessions. It's about doing the same thing consistently, showing up day after day after day and week after week after week, committing to a process where your ego is telling you to run hard, but you're ignoring your ego and you're just running at the exact pace that's going to be perfect for increasing and improving your 70.3, your Ironman run. So there's a lot of gains to be had, but more importantly, there's a lot of satisfaction to be had from this process. I know our athletes who've been with us for multiple seasons, they love this winter block. They love meeting up on Zwift to do the interval sessions. They love comparing the results of their run test and their FTP test. The winter has become, it's almost like the winter event and then the summer racing, but the winter is what people get a tremendous amount of satisfaction from. And I'm genuinely really excited for our new athletes to be part of the community with them and to train in a whole different way, because I know what a difference it's going to make to people, because I've seen the difference it's made to other people in the past already. So yeah, if you're new to the team and you're about to embark on the winter journey with us, welcome. It's going to be a fantastic time. You're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to do a lot of hard work. You're going to have a lot of satisfaction from the end of it, for absolute sure. And you're going to see some great results. But most importantly, you're going to get great satisfaction from dedicating yourself and committing to the training process here. Guys who are not coached by us and who are coaching yourselves, I hope this has given you some inspiration to go away for your winter block. And if I've got a wish for you, it's that you get to the end of the winter feeling the same way that our athletes do, having the same results that our athletes do. and really knowing that you're going into the springtime, significantly fitter, traveling 2-3K an hour faster on the bike as you transition to more riding outdoors again in the springtime. Yeah, awesome. So listen, if you are listening and you're interested in finding out more about coaching with us, there's a link in the show notes. I'd love to have a chat with you. It books straight through to my calendar. We can find out whether you'd be a good fit for joining the team. And I think for the people who've booked calls and we've had chats with, I think you already know whether you'd be a good fit for the team from having listened to the podcast or watched YouTube already and seen us talk about this. And, it's pretty obvious, I think, that we're genuinely really into what we do here. So I'd love to chat to you if you're thinking about it. As this episode goes live, you've got just less than a week left before our annual price rise, which is going to happen on the 1st of November. So if you listen to this as it goes live, you've got about a week to book a call and get in with us before the price goes up. I've said before, athletes who are with us get to keep the rate that they join at forever. So we've got athletes who joined 6, 7, 8 years ago and are still paying the price they paid back then, which, is a massive saving compared to our current membership rates. But I would rather keep athletes for that long period of time. I don't believe in putting prices up on athletes, and we never have done. And I hope we can always avoid doing that unless we absolutely have to. We've managed to do so far. So you will keep the rate that you join at for life. I don't want you to miss out. I don't want you to sit there and wonder whether you should make the call or not, and then leave it a week and then find that the prices have gone up. So make the call now and have a chat with us. No obligation. I'd love to see if we can genuinely help people out. That's how we work best. And also for existing members, there's a bit of a call out here. We've got our membership drive on. If we can get as many new athletes as we can before the end of October, you could help out some athletes here who would be a good fit for the team. If you know somebody who'd be a good fit for the team and you can pass your details on and they join, we'll give you a big referral thank you. We'll give you 2 extra months on your membership as a thank you for getting someone to join the team who fits in well with us. So if you're sitting there and thinking, do you know what? My boss at work, the CEO does, I chatted to someone the other day, my CEO does Ironman, and he actually said, I don't want to tell him to join because I want to try and beat him next year, which is totally fair enough. But if you've got a friend who you think would like to join, if you've got a partner who would like to join, if you've got friends at the club who you think would benefit from structured coaching, please put them in touch. And as a thank you, we'll give you 2 extra months on your membership at the point your membership runs out. So everyone's a winner, hopefully. Your friend gets great coaching, everyone improves, and we get to increase our membership. So everyone's a winner. All right. So listen, thank you very much for listening and watching. It's meant a lot to me that you've taken the time to do this. If you would like to find out more about us, you can go to the link in the show notes. I think we've got the best overall triathlon coaching program for busy age groupers. If you want to find out more about our sponsors, Precision Fuel and Hydration, you can use the code OA23 for 10% off your first order, for 15% off your first order, at precisionfuelandhydration.com. If you've never come across this company before, they make the best electrolytes, gels, carbohydrate chews, drink mixes. You are going to need electrolytes in your body if you're training indoors over the winter to prevent cramp and to stay hydrated. And having the right concentration of electrolytes is absolutely key. So they've got an online sweat test you can take on the website, which I highly recommend. If it turns out that you're a very heavy sweater or a salty sweater or both like me, you can even see them in person for a clinically accurate milligram of, a milligram of sodium per liter of sweat lost. I know exactly how many milliliters I lose, and it's a lot, believe you me. So I can't get away with not taking it when I'm training indoors on the trainer or the treadmill. So precisionfuelandhydration.com, get over and check them out. All right, guys, thank you very much for listening and watching. Until next week, have a great, safe training and racing week. If you're thinking about coaching, don't hang about, book a call with us and get in before the end of the month. And otherwise, thanks again. I'm Coach Rob Wilby, and you've been listening and watching to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast.